Today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, should the Hornets sell high while LaMelo is riding a hot streak? Plus, what's the front court fallout going to be once Mark Williams and Nick Richards return to the lineup? And I'll preview tonight's matchup against the Miami Heat. That's all ahead today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
Welcome into Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for joining us every single day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. I'm Doug Branson from everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm typically joined by my host, Walker Mail from WFNZ 12 to 3 every day, but he is prepping for the Street Turkeys event at the Doghouse in Uptown Charlotte, a big charity event that WFNZ does every year. So please listen, maybe go check them out at the Doghouse if you have an opportunity. This episode is sponsored by Robinhood Gold. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. So I heard a conversation on Kevin O'Connor's show, Kevin O'Conman's show, and it was with Tate Frazier, who was formerly of The Ringer. I don't know if he's still with The Ringer, but he was the guest on Kevin O'Connor's show. And he was advocating for the Hornets to start making calls, for Jeff Peterson to start making calls on LaMelo Ball. I'll get to that in just a second. Plus, Nick Richards, Mark Williams, they're practicing with the Swarm. I think they're practicing in Charlotte. Not sure if they actually went down to Greensboro, but they are getting closer and closer to being part of the action. They're out tonight against the Heat, but it seems like they're getting super close to being available for the Hornets. What does that mean for some of these other front court players that have been getting big minutes, like Tidjane Salaun, the rookie, and Moussa Diabate, a fan favorite two-way player? What happens to those guys once Nick and Mark return? But first, I want to talk about this conversation that I heard between Kevin O'Connor and Tate Frazier, where essentially Tate was saying, hey, the Hornets season, it doesn't look great right now. The losses are starting to pile up. Some of the early season buzz seems to be melting away a little bit because of injuries. Once again, third straight year, the Hornets are dealing with multiple injuries. The Hornets now have been without their third, fourth, and fifth option in scoring. No centers still. So is it the time, while LaMelo is scoring out of his mind, to start calling on teams and saying, hey, what you got? What do you give us? What will you give us for LaMelo Ball, a player that is already an all-star, maybe due to be an all-star for his second season, and certainly playing at an all-NBA level? I mean, he's nearly the scoring leader in the NBA, just below Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he's doing it on a team where there aren't a lot of options, where the defense is going to focus on him a lot, and he's been able to score. That's a rare thing in the NBA, and certainly something teams would entertain in terms of a trade. But should the Hornets entertain that? I don't think so. Hands off LaMelo, I say, with all due respect to Tate Frazier, who I think keeps the Hornets in national conversations a lot of times when other people wouldn't. And I differentiate his conversation with Kevin O'Connor with guys like Chandler Parsons, who will go on their shows and say LaMelo needs to be with the Clippers because nobody cares about Charlotte. Like, there's the conversation between the guys who don't care about the Hornets at all, that would rather the Hornets just not exist within the NBA landscape, and guys like Tate Frazier who are looking at a situation with LaMelo and saying, man, the Hornets could get 3-4 first-round picks, some pick swaps, do the Presty thing, sell high, gather the assets, stay patient, and eventually build a winner. And while part of me understands the allure of that, particularly because there is a new front office and Jeff Peterson and Dokan Antuale, like these guys that are in the front office now, have good track records with making good draft picks and turning those picks into good role players and sometimes all-stars. Like, I get the allure of that. The problem is that getting all-star and all-NBA level talent here in Charlotte has been so rare over the past 20 years that it would be really difficult for me to see the Hornets moving on from that player, particularly because you've got Brandon Miller, who, when these conversations crop up, and they have over the past 2 seasons since Brandon Miller's been drafted, they often revolve around this idea of build around Brandon Miller, which is like super fun to say. Build around Brandon Miller. Just do it. Build around him. It's super cool to say. But then you start thinking about it and you go, wait a minute, Brandon Miller's played super well. And for a rookie, he has a great understanding of the game, and he has the respect of his coaches, and he wants to win, but he hasn't proven anything in the playoffs. He has some serious questions around his handle and his ability to fight off double teams, the kinds of things that all-stars, all-NBA level players, the guy that is his GOAT, Paul George, the thing that those guys do routinely, he's not doing them routinely. And instead, when the defensive heat focuses on him a lot, he's turning the basketball over. And so I think the story is yet written on what Brandon Miller is going to become. And so if you're going to sacrifice LaMelo, who you know exactly what that player is, you don't know what he is in the playoffs yet, but you know the regular season, he's an all-star level player. And you're starting to get inklings that he's an all-NBA level scorer. You know that. That's a known quantity. So you're going to sacrifice that to build around a player that you're not quite sure about. I need to see LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller with a healthy lineup for 10, 15, 20 games. See what that looks like. I think the franchise honestly I think they know they need to see that as well. Because then you start to understand what Brandon Miller is and what he isn't, what LaMelo is and what he isn't. But give LaMelo a chance to play with some centers. A lot of what LaMelo's doing right now is a result of the injuries. Let's see what LaMelo looks like when this team is healthy. Let's see if he's still forcing the action a little bit, or if he starts to pile up big assist numbers like Jalen Brunson is doing for New York. Had 17 assists the other night because he has weapons, because he trusts Karl Anthony Towns to go and make a play. He can trust OG Anunoby to go make a play. That's what I want to see before you start entertaining calls to trade LaMelo Ball. And not to mention, like, what would you get in return for LaMelo Ball? I know it's, again, same thing with the Brandon Miller, where it's like easy to say build around Brandon Miller. It's easy to look at LaMelo and doing all this scoring and going, oh yeah, you could get 4 first rounders, pick swaps. I mean, Drew Holiday got that. Rudy Gobert got that. What's the difference between Drew Holiday and Rudy Gobert and LaMelo Ball? The big difference is those guys had playoff experience. LaMelo Ball doesn't. And I think if you're a good team, and if you have any assets left and you haven't already traded them, that's a problem too. And you can make it work and not get second aproned. That's a problem too with moving LaMelo Ball, because he has a big number right now. So you're going to do that for a player that hasn't been playoff tested, that you take into the playoffs and you don't know if it's going to completely blow up your opportunity to get past a first round, second round opponent? To me, that would depress his value. That would be a team going, okay, I'll give you 3 picks and a pick swap. And maybe that's still worth it to you. Maybe you say, okay, well, the Hornets can take those 3 picks and do something with them. You better hope so, because if they don't, and look, the draft is a crapshoot, but if they can't compile those picks to bring in other talent to build around Brandon Miller, and Brandon Miller ends up being like a high-level role player and not a superstar level player, then you'll look back on that move and say, wow, we really gave up the bird in the hand at that point. So it's a huge risk. And I don't think it's one that the Hornets should take, particularly because LaMelo Ball represents the best opportunity for this Hornets team to get back to the playoffs, something they haven't done in almost 10 years. I think LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller together represent the best opportunity for this franchise to win a playoff series if both of those guys can max out at the same time, and they're generally on the same timeline. If those guys can do it, then, that represents the best opportunity they have to win a playoff series in 20 plus years. So I would just say cool off on the LaMelo Ball sell high conversation right now, because it courts more questions than you have answers. That's what I want to see. I want to see answers for LaMelo Ball. All right, coming up on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Front court fallout. What's going to happen to this front court rotation once Mark Williams and Nick Richards come back? Moussa Diabate, Tidjane Salaun. What happens? I'll tell you after this short break.
This episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and the perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth, and these generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhoodgold.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. More Locked On Hornets ahead.
Back here on Locked On Hornets. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. I did mention also that we have a newsletter. Go to lockedondaily.com. Sign up for our newsletter. If you're a fan of a Western Conference team, you've picked a team to adopt already. Don't give up on the Hornets yet. But if you have, go to lockedondaily.com and subscribe to multiple newsletters to get your daily fix from not just me on the Locked On Hornets newsletter, but you also get writing from Mike Shear, Katie Heindel. You get fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. It's really cool. So that's lockedondaily.com. All right, let's talk about this front court situation. They've been without Mark Williams. The franchise has for nearly a calendar year, dating back to last season. But they've been without him all year because this season, because of a left foot injury to a tendon that seemed minor at first and obviously has turned into a major issue. And then Nick Richards with the rib fracture that he suffered a few games into this season. They've been without a big that has the size and skill to run like functional pick and roll offense. So when both of those guys come back, they're going to be welcomed with open arms by Charles Lee, who wants to establish a defensive identity. And it's really difficult to do that when you don't have somebody that can command the paint, that can chase guards out of the paint. And Diabate is doing great things. He's given teams hell underneath the basket, particularly when it comes to rebounding, but he's also blocking lob attempts. Like, we've seen great defense from him, but he's not he's only a threat if he sees it out. But teams are not adjusting their offense to stay away from Moussa Diabate. They do that with Mark Williams because of his length, because of the condor wings, as Eric Collins likes to call them. They started to do that with Nick Richards too because of his shot blocking ability. And so they're going to be welcomed back with open arms. What does that mean for Tidjane Salaun and Moussa Diabate? It would mean something significantly different if Grant Williams were still healthy, but he's not. He's out for the year with the ACL tear. So it does open up some minutes at the power forward position, possibly small ball center position. I think it's going to be much more difficult for Moussa Diabate to crack what this rotation becomes with both of those centers healthy, because he can't shoot. And Mark Williams can't shoot. And Nick Richards can't shoot. And in today's NBA game, it's difficult to like be a true competitor in the playoffs if you're not 5 out, or at least a threat to be 5 out. So you're 4 out, 1 in. That's what they would be with Mark Williams or Nick Richards at center. It's impossible, I think, to even play functional NBA offense if you're 3 out, 2 in, unless you're, well, it would be harder to win games unless you're just really, really good at defense, like take Orlando, for example. The Hornets are not Orlando. I don't think that they could play 3 out, 2 in and be functional as an offense. Why? Because then teams pack the paint. They're already doing that, by the way. That's why you've seen LaMelo go to his floater game over and over, because when he goes to make his drive to the rim, he's getting by his guy who's also on his back waiting for a chase down block. Then there's like 2 help defenders that are coming over, and they're going to challenge LaMelo to kick it out to the corner because it's going to get kicked out to Cody Martin. It's going to get kicked out to Tidjane Salaun. It's going to get kicked out to Moussa Diabate, who are inconsistent 3-point shooters at best, and Moussa Diabate is not going to shoot it at all. He's not even going to be there, so it allows the defense to be a little bit closer to the rim. Okay. Going to be tougher for Moussa, despite everything that we've seen. Tidjane, it's a little easier because he can hit a 3-point shot. He's proven it. He does, and he could, if he gets on a heater, make the defense respect that over the course of a season. But his production hasn't been great. Miles Bridges will eventually get back and probably play a ton of minutes. Like, even if Tidjane plays some backup 4, I think it's like in the 15-ish range. Like, he's not getting 30 minutes anymore. Bye-bye 30-minute Tidjane. A lot of fans getting frustrated that Tidjane's not putting up a lot of production in those minutes, but all I would say to that is like, that's what I expected. Because for a couple of reasons. One, he shouldn't be in this position to begin with. He's in this out of necessity. He should be in the G League putting up 30 points and 20 rebounds, and everybody looking at those and complaining that he's not with the Hornets and saying, look at all the amazing things that he's doing. That's the position he should be in. And I don't blame fans for being impatient, because they're seeing Dalton Connect do good things in LA. They're seeing Donovan Clingan's injured now, but they're seeing him pile up rebounds for Portland. They're seeing Jared McCain, which I don't know that was necessarily a target like Dalton Connect was, but Jared McCain is looking like an absolute star for an injured Philadelphia team. On the Dalton Connect thing, I think you have to be careful with any player that's playing with LeBron James. I've seen this story too many times in the NBA, not just with LeBron James, but guy gets drafted late, plays with amazing playmaker, looks really great, then gets traded to Sacramento, looks terrible. Like, that's just been a story I've seen over and over in the NBA. So you have to be careful there. Although, look, Dalton Connect could be the real deal. But that story has to be written. Same with Tidjane. I think he can be the real deal too. It's just going to take time. He's caught on a lot faster than I thought, but not fast enough. He's still out of position more times than he's in position. And if you're LaMelo Ball, it makes me think of something that Steve Clifford once talked about with coaching, where a coach loses a locker room. It's not in the locker room. It's actually on the sidelines when there's a late game situation and the coach either has the wrong answer or doesn't have an answer. And he's looking face to face with 5 guys who have been playing basketball their entire lives at an elite level. And if they don't trust that guy has an answer, and that can happen very quickly, then you lose the locker room. For Tidjane, I think LaMelo Ball has an otherworldly sense of like where guys should be, where he should be, where other guys should be to make plays. And I think if LaMelo throws you the basketball and gets the sense that, not that you tried to make a play and missed a lot, but that he gave you the ball and you don't really even have the tools or the vision or the understanding or the IQ or the experience necessary to allow you to even start to make a play, to do the little things that would put you in a position to make a play. But before you even get the basketball, much less when he throws you the ball. If he starts to see that, the trust falls out. And that's where you're seeing LaMelo Ball. He'd rather than throw it to Tidjane Salaun, he would rather, take these crazy 3-point shots like he took over Goga Bitadze, where he looks like he's had like 3 hard seltzers and he just drunkenly steps back and knocks down the shot. He knows he has a better chance of making a play for this team doing that than he does giving the basketball to Tidjane Salaun. That's where the Hornets offense is right now. That's where Tidjane is. Not his fault. But when Mark Williams and Nick Richards, who do possess size, skill, experience, IQ, Like, they have issues. Each of those players has issues that they've got to continue to work through and develop. But it's not where Tidjane is. And LaMelo will trust those guys to make plays. So, you're going to see Miles Bridges pile up a lot of minutes. And honestly, it's probably why Miles Bridges has spent so much time out. And Trey Mann too. Because I think Lee understands, like, I'm going to have to depend on these guys for a ton. So if you're going to do that, you might as well get those guys back, not at 80%, but get them back at 100%. And also, going back to the LaMelo conversation, and I'll throw this into this conversation as well, the Hornets are 2 games back of the team that they're going to play tonight, the Miami Heat, who sit in the 6th spot in the Eastern Conference. So if they somehow miraculously pull it all together offensively and are able to keep pace with the Miami Heat tonight and get a win, if the breaks go your way, you're 1 game back of the 6th seed. Like, is that like blow it all up, trade LaMelo? Are you in that territory yet? You've got plenty of time. People always forget this is an 82-game season. I lament that fact. I think it should be less. But people forget there is plenty of time to break it all down, trade everyone except for, Brandon Miller, your core pieces. If they want to go that route, there's plenty of time for that. Plenty of losses ahead if they want to do that. But right now, I think you have to compete. Right now, I think you've got to see LaMelo Ball with 10, 15, 20 games, healthy roster. What does that look like? Charles Lee's a big factor in this. I know I'm turning back into this conversation, but I forgot to mention the Lee factor. Like, to me, Lee represents an opportunity to get through to LaMelo and turn him. He's already a great regular season player. Like, already. And you can win all NBA honors being a great regular season player. It doesn't make you a great postseason player, which I think would, as I said in the first segment, would depress that value for teams. What would you get in return? Are you confident you can get 4 picks in return? But I think Lee could turn him into could help. That's what you hired him for. You hired him to develop players based on his championship experience. I'd like to see if LaMelo Ball in a Hornets jersey could be a great playoff player. You cannot see that if you trade him away. You can't really see that if they're not healthy either. So, as much as it's been difficult to watch this team struggle, flounder, it's been fun to watch LaMelo work through all of that. It's been educational to see Brandon Miller work through some of that stuff. But it hasn't been fun to watch them lose. I get that. But I'm glad they're taking their time with these injuries, because if you can get all 4 of these guys back in the next game or two, because you got a back-to-back coming up after this. You play Friday, Saturday, Knicks. I don't recall who's on the back half of that back-to-back. But if you get those guys back for the Cup game against New York and they're fully healthy and you can get a good evaluation, that's, to me, this season is not about can we win game X. It's about, can you get a number of games together with a decently healthy roster? Maybe Grant Williams, that injury is so severe to the Hornets' playoff chances, they really don't have a shot. But it doesn't mean you don't want to see what this roster can do. I mean, take Houston, for example. Houston right now, 3rd in the Western Conference, looking great. 2 seasons ago under Stephen Silas, they were bottom of the league. Hire Ime Udoka. They got a hot start, tailed off, won 40-ish games, missed the playoffs, but they knew what that team was, and then they went and made a few more adjustments around that. And now they're 3rd in the Western Conference. That can be the Hornets. But not if you bail on your star player. The Rockets didn't bail on their star player, and they're resisting calls now to bail on what they've built for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Hornets, take notes. Hornets fans, take notes. You can't bail on your star player until you know what you know and what you don't know. All right, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Quick preview of tonight's game against the Miami Heat. And a programming note, we will not be on the air tomorrow for Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, gobble, gobble. And we're also going to be out Friday, but we will be back on Monday to recap all the action. But I'm going to be back in just a second to talk about the Heat.
This episode is brought to you by Built, B-I-L-T. Here's a PSA for anyone who rents. If you haven't heard of Built, you're about to thank me. Earning points on rent is now a reality when you pay your rent through Built. You don't even have to check with your landlord to start earning points that you can then use toward flights, hotel stays, fitness classes, and even your next rent payment. Let me break it down for you. There's no cost to join Built, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. Built points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world you can redeem your Built points toward. Points can also be redeemed towards a future rent payment and unique experiences that only Built members can access. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's JOINBILT. Joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. And make sure to use our URL so they know that we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA to start earning points on your rent payments today. One more segment to go. Locked On Hornets.
Back here on Locked On Hornets, and they've got a game tonight against the Miami Heat. And the Miami Heat are playing better. They started the year struggling, even though Tyler Hero was on a Tyler Heater and, scoring 35 plus on the regular, 40 plus on the regular. They were struggling without Jimmy Butler. Well, Jimmy Butler's back. He's healthy, and he is leading a turnaround for the Miami Heat. And they played the Miami Heat in the third game of this season. And guess what the story of that game was? It was turnovers. The Miami Heat scored 24 points off of the Hornets' turnovers, and after the game, Charles Lee was very adamant that this team had to control the basketball. Well, the Hornets are just off a game against the Orlando Magic where they did not do that at all, and now they host the Heat, another home game opportunity for the Hornets where they played better at home, but they have to do better than that, and the Heat are going to challenge them defensively, maybe in slightly less of a way than the Orlando Magic did, but I'm sure the Heat watched that game. I'm sure the scouts watched that game and said, that worked. Constantly blitzing, double teaming LaMelo Ball, throwing everything you got at him and Brandon Miller. You can turn Brandon Miller over. That worked. So I think you're going to see a lot of similar things. You're obviously with the Heat, you're going to see a lot of zone. How do they respond to that? That's, with the zone, it's going to take away. It might give you some more opportunities to rebound. Look for that. Maybe they crash the glass a little bit more like they did against Orlando. But it's going to maybe hurt your ability to get some outside shots. I mean, look, bottom line is going to come down to LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. Can they both go for 35 plus to keep them in the game? Can they come out with the same defensive intensity and mindset and rebounding mindset that they started the game against Orlando? Or are they going to look at those tough losses and start to get existential about it and say, look, we don't have the guys. We're going to get the guys back, but we don't have them. That's a very human thing to do. And you can rah-rah and you can build yourself up and the coach can come in and say, all right, here's the game plan. Here's what we're going to do. And ultimately you can look at the injury report and say, okay, we did all of that against Orlando and Orlando didn't even shoot well. They could have shot a lot better and we still didn't win the game. So really, you and I, we could sit here and talk about the scouting report and we could talk about, the bench being a huge factor in this one because Miami has a ton of bench wrenches. Highsmith, Pella Larson has been playing really well this season. So, we could talk about that all day long, but this is simply going to come down to, do the Hornets have the resolve to deal with one more game without all of these players and being able to give that effort? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I think you're going to see, if the Hornets have a chance in this game, you're going to see it in the first 5 minutes of this game. Because the Heat are rolling right now, and they see an opportunity. They're sitting in the 6th seed. Miami is starting to pull it together. Philadelphia is not. I think if you're Miami, you're seeing an opportunity here to, and really even the top of the Eastern Conference, Cleveland's obviously dominant. Boston's dominant. But one or two injuries, Miami's done it before. They've made miracle playoff runs before. So I think they're seeing an opportunity here. And their injury report not yet submitted by the time that I got around to recording this episode. So there's always a chance Miami rests a couple of guys, against Charlotte on the road for Miami. There's always that shot. It doesn't matter because the bench for Miami is really good. So Hornets, they've proven against Orlando that they can hang around despite all of this. The question is, can you continue to do that with all of these injuries? Can you continue to put up that kind of effort? Challenge for Charles Lee, challenge for LaMelo Ball, challenge for Brandon Miller. They're the leaders of this team. Can they get this team to continue to believe and hold on just a little bit longer until some of those reinforcements come back? I will be watching it. David Walker is going to be on the notes for everyhornetsboxscore.com. I'm sure that Walker will be talking a little bit about it today on WFNZ. Check that out, 12 to 3. Go visit them down at the Doghouse for the Street Turkeys event. Donate if you're able. And go check out our free newsletter at lockedondaily.com. Sign up. It's really important to the show. It helps the show. It helps me. And, you get to hear from me a little bit more. And you get to get also some NBA writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shear, fantasy basketball tips if you're into that from Josh Lloyd. So it's super cool and it's free and it's daily. It's awesome. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We're going to be back on Monday to recap all of this. That'll be a big show. Thanks so much for your continued support of our silly show. Walker and I will be back on Monday.